Hey everybody, Steve Bourie here from the American Casino Guide book. And today our video is called Sports Betting, How to Bet and How to Win. Hi, today's video is all about sports betting. It's called Sports Betting, How to Bet and How to Win. Now actually we've broken it down into two parts. If you saw part one, that was about how to bet, how to go in, read the odds on the sheets or up on the boards that you'll find in the sports book, and how to actually go and make your bets and the various different types of bets you can make. Now if you didn't see it, be sure and go back and watch part one, because that is the primer on how to make sports bets. Now today we're going to talk about part two, and this is how to be a winner at sports betting. Now this interview is with Blair Rodman. He's a former professional poker player. He's a known casino advantage player, and he made his living as a professional sports bettor on a sports betting team. So Blair's coming out with a book called All About Sports Betting, and like I said, in part one, we went over the bets you can make, and this is part two. It's how do you become a long-term winner at sports betting. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to do, as most things. If it were simple, there'd be a lot of people doing it, and there aren't. But there are people who can make a living as a sports bettor. So we're going to discuss that subject. We're also going to talk about some things that will possibly give you an advantage as a sports bettor. We'll look into different areas, and plus we'll get his opinion on touts. Those are the guys who charge you money to give you their picks, which Blair has some interesting thoughts on that. So here's Blair Rodman part two, how to be a winner in sports betting. It's interesting that you threw that in. So sharp bettors could actually make money on
Yes.
parlay cards.
Yes.
Okay, I was not aware of that.
Yes.
All right, very interesting. So speaking of winning, okay, so now we're coming to the important part. Now we've spoken about how a sportsbook makes its money and the different bets you can make, and hopefully people understand now how to go to their favorite sportsbook and read the lines up there or on the sheets and go up and make their bets. But now, how does someone make money? And if you want to make money as a playing blackjack, and tell people, well, you got to learn to count cards.
Exactly.
So it can be done. Now I do know that there are people who are professional sports bettors that can make a living at it. But so for the average guy, I guess number one, what does it take to be able to make money consistently as a sportsbook bettor? And number two, if someone doesn't have the skills, what can they do to possibly increase their skills or that to be better at their sportsbook betting?
Okay. The thing I learned when I was with the betting group was how much I didn't know before that. You know, I was a poker player. I would bet on sports. I didn't know anything. I didn't know how much I didn't know. So our operation was, we had 12 people that worked 12 hours a day, around 7 days a week. And even at the end, we got to where we weren't still beating it. It's a huge project to try to be a long-term winner in sports. You need a brilliant handicapper, and you need the people to be able to bet the money once you start, because it's hard to bet the money it is to handicap the game sometimes if you're betting a lot of money. Because the casinos, people don't realize you can't walk into a casino and bet as much as you want. You can't. They have limits. If they know who you are, they might cut down your limits. There's a big problem right now in New Jersey where they are barring sharp players. They'll cut them down to $10, or they'll just tell them you can't bet her anymore, which is a big problem.
Well, that's one thing I didn't understand. So how do they know that you're beating them? They see the same face all the time?
Either that or on apps. Betting apps are in Nevada casinos. Most of the casinos now have an app. So you go in and sign up for an account, you put money in the casino, and you bet on your phone, or you bet on your tablet or whatever. Mm-hmm. In New Jersey, they even have websites, which we don't have here for some of the sports books. So they can track. Obviously, if you're betting on the app, they track everything. But if you're a sportsbook manager, you're watching who's betting, and you know who's betting more than $25, $50, $100. If you got guys coming in, bet 1,000, 2,000 game, you know who they are. And you're going to watch them, and if they're beating you, and say, you know what, you're too good for us. Now, I don't think it's fair. There's limited licenses in these states. They should have a maximum bet that they should allow everybody to bet, but that's not the way it's working. So to me, and this is a little bit outside the scope of what we're doing, most of the bettors that bet a lot of money, the really big bettors, bet most of it with the offshore books that will accept their action. So I'm predicting that as more and more states get sports betting, legalized sports betting, they're going to put pressure on the federal government to shut off access to the offshore books, which is going to leave the big professional bettors nowhere to bet. Because they can't bet here, they've thrown them out, and they can't bet offshore, they have nowhere to go. And the day that the PAPSA was passed, I immediately thought this is going to be bad for serious sports bettors. Hopefully it won't be that way, but I think it's going to be.
So for a sports bettor, if you get good at it, similar to a card counter in blackjack, the casino would say, nope, we don't want you at the blackjack table, we don't want your action. So the same things
it's very
will
similar.
happen at the sports book.
It's very similar, although at the blackjack table you can put on an act. With a sports book, you can probably bet some other stuff just randomly, maybe to try to disguise what you're doing.
Can you send someone else in on your behalf? Or
they passed a law here in the 90s called the messenger betting law, because there was the biggest sports bettor ever, his name Billy Walters, and he was destroying them, and they obviously wouldn't write a big bet for him, so he was using what's called beards to go in and bet for him. And they didn't like it, and they said, we passed a law saying if you cannot come in and bet money for someone else. Now that doesn't really apply if somebody says, here's $20, bet a future for me. Nobody's going to care. But if you're betting serious money, if you're going to bet $50,000 on a football game and it's somebody else's money, you might have a problem.
All right. So one question: what do you? And I've heard a number, and I forget what it is, because a lot of people may think, well, you got a 50-50 shot to win. So, but realistically, to come out as a long-term winner, what percentage of your bets do you need to win as a sportsbook bettor?
If you're laying 110, if you're betting money lines laying 110, you need to hit 52.4% to break even. Everybody says, I can do that easy. No, we can't. It's not easy. If you can hit 54%, you can get very, very wealthy.
Wow.
Yes. So people claim to hit all these ridiculous numbers. They don't. It's very, very hard. So yeah, that's it. Everybody said, I can do that. It's easy. It's one way or the other. But it's really not. And many casual bettors do exactly the wrong thing. The biggest thing they do, it's called recency bias. They'll watch a game and the Arizona Cardinals look absolutely terrible. And they say, I'm betting against them the next week no matter what. Well, that's not the way it works. They might have had a bad game, bad coaching plan, who knows. But that's where the mistake is made, and that's why most recreational bettors don't even hit 50%. They're doing the opposite thing of what they're supposed to be doing.
So for you, as a sports bettor yourself, what are some of the things that you try and do yourself to try and get an edge at the game?
Okay, when the group split up, I'm not a computer guy. I'm not a high-level handicapper. So then you have to find other ways if you want to try to win. And if somebody is talented enough to handicap out there, great, you can probably win a lot of money. But it's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of effort and talent. So here's some other things that you could do to try to find positive spots. And I mentioned following earlier, which is people who see lines moving and try to jump on those lines. It's gotten very sophisticated, and some of the professional followers have the Don Best screen with the up to the minute line moves. So as soon as they see something move, and they're pretty sure, and it takes experience in watching and understanding what's going on, but if they're pretty sure it's a big play coming in from a big player, they will try to find on the, we call them outs, the number of books that they have they can bet at, and find that number and jump on it. So that's one way, is following, trying to follow the big bettors. Now it can get a little tricky because sometimes the big bettors will, we call it phoning a game. They'll bet it the wrong way to let the followers move it to a different number, and then you're stuck with a bad bet. So it's not very easy to do, really. You need to have experience, but that's one way that people beat it. Another way they do it, as I mentioned before, is finding stale lines. You're finding books that are lazy and moving their lines. And if you're monitoring things and comparing them to sharp books, you might be able to find things that are far enough off to give you an edge. The parlay cards I mentioned, and there's lots more than just straight parlay cards. There's half-point cards, teaser cards, ties, lose cards. There's all kinds of different cards. But they are still, I know people that use them and can find an edge in them when finding stale lines. Like I said, that has a shelf life. but it's still out there for people who want to do it. You know, the people I know that win at sports and win seriously work tremendously hard. You know, I have a friend that travels. He's just traveling constantly, all these little sports books around the state and doing all these different things. And he can find the edges, but it's not easy. It's work. Mm-hmm. The key to winning at sports is information. And there's so many information sites out there now that have up-to-the-minute injury information, maybe interviews with coaches, you know, figuring out coaches' game plans are valuable for totals. You know, in basketball, do they want to run? Do they want to focus on defense? Those kinds of things. So there's lots of different information you get out there. Injuries are the most important. Weather information is very important in football and baseball. And there are sites that, I'll list them all in my book. I can't do it here. Sites you can go to, see what the weather is for that day, how it's going to affect the game. You know, is there possible rain out? All these different kinds of things. Information is the key. The more information you get, the better off you are. I'll tell a story that I put in the book. We were betting basketball, and Shaquille O'Neal was playing for Orlando. Now, he was a superstar, and he's worth a lot of points, and he was questionable for the game. And we needed to know if he was playing or not. So one of our guys called the Orlando office and said, you know, can you, he got himself up to the secretary, to the president of the club, and said, you know, I got a bunch of kids that want to come see the game tonight, and they really want to see Shaq. Can you tell me if he's playing? And she said, I can't give that information. She said, come on, they're a bunch of kids. They love Shaq. She goes, all right, he's not playing tonight. So that gave us a big edge. Another thing that we did back in the old days, and this was the most brilliant thing I'd ever heard in sports betting, was one of our guys says, we're going to find somebody in every city that we deal with to send us the sports pages in the morning. This prior to the internet. This information wasn't out there. So we'd get in the morning, about 5 or 6 in the morning, and start reading. And we would find all kinds of things that nobody else found out about till later in the day, which gave us a tremendous edge. So information is a big key. And if you have ways to do it, or you're diligent, then you can find discrepancies. Teasers. A teaser is a way where you alter the line spread, the point spread, in your favor, but you pay for it in the juice that you pay. So like there was a book written by Stanford Wong, who was actually my casino tournament guru, about sports betting, and he found that if you bet a teaser, you can move, like a 6-point teaser, you can move it like from the Giants -7.5 down to -1.5. Well, he found if you can move these games through key numbers in football, which are essentially 7, 4, and 3, you know, 3 being the most important, you can get an edge even if you're laying the juice, which at the time was, you know, before he came out there, sometimes it's even money or -110 to bet a 2-point, you know, a 6-point teaser. Now that the books figured out that they were getting beaten at, so they started raising their juice to -120, -130, I mean, see -140, which makes them unplayable. But if you have a book where you can lay 110 on a 6-point teaser in the NFL and you move through those numbers, you can actually get an edge. Parlays, people love parlays. We talked about this, and they're fun, but you get a mathematically better payoff if you include a money line in your parlay. So let's say you go up to the window, you're going to bet a 3-team parlay. So you give them the game numbers. Let's say the game numbers are Giants -6, Philly -4, and Kansas City +2. Well, instead of taking +2, they might have a money line of plus $1.20. You're better off taking the $1.20.
And why is that?
I don't know. I can't explain exactly the math, but your overall disadvantage is reduced if you do that. It's a little bit complicated.
So it's a mathematically better bet if you take the money.
So if you like parlays, you might want to consider that. I'll explain it more in detail in the book, but it's something to think about. Like I said, the propositions, people who play daily fantasy sports are very tuned into every player's capability. They make projections. There's a million different daily fantasy sites out there that will break this kind of stuff down if you want that information. And that translates to the player props that you can bet with a sports book. So if, you know, they put a value on Pascal Siakam tonight at 17.5. Well, they will sell him and they'll tell you if he's worth the price that they're talking. But they'll also help you determine what his expected number of points is if you do that kind of research. So you can sometimes find an edge there. You can often find an edge by shopping between different books on the props, and you'll find discrepancies there because there's no Don Best screen or any kind of screen for props. So the other sports books don't know what's getting bet or how it's moving. That's another way you can probably do it. Finding inefficiencies. and they're still out there. As many people are studying, many smart people are studying this. There are things where the books are inefficient. And sometimes they can't help it because they just have to keep it the way it is because the public will pound them on the wrong side if they move it. They'll be really unbalanced. The best story I had, there was a basketball bettor, and his name's Haralabos Bulgaris. And he discovered, he's a really brilliant guy anyway in basketball, but he discovered that there was flaws in basketball halftime lines, NBA halftime lines. They weren't adjusting the way they were supposed to. They were doing it by a formula, and the formula wasn't accurate, and he won millions of dollars from doing it until they finally had to change what they were doing. When my group, we did that with hockey. We came in and bet almost exclusively underdogs in hockey, and they eventually had to just say, our underdog prices are too high, we have to adjust. There's lots of things out there with quarter bets, with first score bets. There's all kinds of different things out there that you might be able to find inefficiencies within these books where you can get an edge. But it takes work. You have to find your own. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but if you look for them and you do the work, you might find them. So, like I said, it all takes work. The last thing that people go to are touts.
Oh, yes, touts.
Now, touts are, the tout business is happier than anyone about this sportsbook expansion. Because touts are people that sell picks to people. People don't think they know how to handicap a game, they don't know what it is, but they'll go to somebody who's telling them, I know what the winner is of this game, this is what you bet. Well, most of them are scammers. And they've been scammers they've been around as long as they were. And, there's been sports betting. But now this has brought it all into the limelight, and they're on the internet constantly. On Twitter, there's people putting out plays, there's people trying to sell plays, all these kinds of things. The bottom line is, they're probably not winners if they're selling their plays. If you're a big winner and you're selling your plays, why would you sell them? You just make the money betting.
Right.
Now, it's not 100% that way with the situation I talked about where people getting thrown out who are winners. I have a guy for props I use who can't bet as much as he wants to, so he supplements his income by selling his picks to other people. But for the most part, touts are to be avoided. Because it's bad enough you had to lay the 110 juice. Now you have to lay the 110 juice and pay the tout for the pick, which is probably worthless. Mm-hmm. So one way you can tell is, remember I told you 52.4%, you break even. 54, you'll make a lot of money. So when you see somebody saying, I hit 70% this year, and I'm 20-0 on my games of the year and all that, they're lying. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different ways that they gin up their figures or their stats and all that kind of stuff. But you're better off just staying away from touts.
All right, there's a lot of stuff there for people to absorb.
There is. Buy my book.
Okay. All right, Blair Rodman, thank you very much for your time and letting everyone know about the basics of sports betting. And when is your book coming out?
Well, it'll be out before the end of the year. Not exactly sure. I would guess it's going into production probably next week. So it'll take a couple of months and it'll be on the shelves.
Okay, so hopefully by October of 2019. And again, the name of the book?
All About Sports Betting.
All About Sports Betting by Blair Rodman, published by Huntington Press. Again, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Don't forget that you can see more of our educational gambling videos on our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/American Casino Guide.